We can go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on Web2App quizzes. My name is Marcus. I'm going to be hosting this today for the first time ever and not being on the other side getting asked questions, which is really cool and exciting. And some housekeeping at the beginning. We're basically, you can ask questions in the chat that we're going to go through at the end of the webinar. We're going to probably have like 50 minutes or so. Let's see how much time there's left. And yeah, this webinar is kindly sponsored. I'm collaborating with FunnelFox on this. So thanks again to the team for making this happen. Super excited to have invited two really cool guests to this. And with that, I want to give it over to you for a quick round of introductions. Ioana, maybe you want to start?
Thank you, Marcus, first of all, for the invitation, and a warm welcome to our audience. My name is Ioana. I'm a product growth independent consultant and founder of IO Growth Lab. I have a background in marketing and product. I've worked for different companies in the past, and currently I am supporting Blinkist in their growth as their CRO product manager for app and web.
Elise, want to go next?
Cool. Well, hi to everyone. Very happy to be here. I'm Elise. I have been in tech for 10 years. I started my career as a data analyst in a YC-backed company. And then I moved to mobile at Miri Growth, which is a performance marketing agency based in London. So I worked on both UA and creatives for gaming and for apps like Paired and Runner. And about 6 months ago, I started an in-house role at Praktika.ai, which is a language learning app. So I'm doing a mix of performance, growth, and creative.
Cool. Yeah. And I'm Marcus Burke, work as a performance marketing consultant, mainly focused on meta ads as my primary channel. Been in the industry for a little over 13 years now, worked in gaming and subscription apps, and lately only focus on sub apps. One thing I forgot to mention, I think, is the webinar will be recorded. It's going to be sent out to everyone afterwards, and also people can still register afterwards to get the recording. So if you feel like anyone should see this after, feel free to still send around the link. Let's start by maybe looking into terminology a bit, because Web2App is kind of a hot topic, but then there is so many words kind of floating around, from Web2App, Web2Web, Web2App quizzes. So I think it makes sense to look into what are we actually going to talk about and what do people mean by all of these. So yeah, how would you define Web2App and Web2App quizzes?
Broadly speaking, I think Web2App is an onboarding flow with payment at the end, where the payment or the conversion happens on web. But there's also like a Web2App where you just land on a landing page and then you go to the App Store. I think when we're talking about Web2App in a broad way, it's that conversion on web, to me.
How about you, Ioana?
Essentially, for me, it means the strategies of bringing users to the app in the end, but through web. That's how I would define it. And web to web is the strategy of doing the payment first, basically online via web, and then shifting the users towards the app.
Yeah.
And we are talking today about web onboarding specifically, which is
another
the part of initiating the purchase via web.
Yeah. Another one of those terms. So yeah, definitely. We're going to talk about those kind of long funnels where you're trying to convert people on the web as well. While, yeah, I would say within Web2App, there can also be flows where you kind of just have a landing page on the web, but then still trying to convert people in the app. Lots of nuance to this. Maybe we have a little bit of time at the end to look into kind of the different strategies there. But starting with Web2App, with quizzes, the web onboarding, where would you say do these sit in kind of the marketing mix? What are you trying to achieve when you're moving people into the web? Ioana, if you want to maybe take this.
Yeah, so first of all, web to app strategies, especially web onboarding, is a strategy to reach new audiences. And I'm referring here to, for example, Meta, Facebook. Marcus, you're a specialist in this, essentially reaching older audiences with more purchase power. So this is a great strategy to do so. But also, if you use web funnels for channels like TikTok, you would reach other types of audiences that are much younger and with different needs. So yeah, essentially you are reaching different audiences with them. And the good thing about it is that it's a great opportunity to create purchase intent, in my opinion. Much stronger than when you use an ad alone. So the idea is that you shift users through this web onboarding and you convince them about the value proposition, about how you are solving their problem. And that basically translates in higher purchase intent and overall also higher LTV going forward. And then, of course, there is the big advantage of bypassing the App Store commissions. We're talking about up to 30%. So it's a great strategy to also boost the margins, but also be more flexible. You can choose either to improve the margins, but you can also choose to be more flexible with the pricing and with the offers.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like everyone is always after the kind of that 30% margin gain, but
Of
then
course.
in the end,
Makes sense.
kind of the whole flow functions so differently that it's not like you can just kind of compare metrics and it can just be 30% better. There's times where it's going to be 100% better just because it's a like great fit for the audience and you did a good job building that funnel. But at times it can be really hard to get to profitability in the first place because it's not like just by default the better flow, and that's what people tend to forget at times, I believe. Yeah, some other strategies I've seen interesting with this is like using Web2App also for like early stage products or even product validation, where maybe there's not even a product yet, but you're kind of testing your marketing angle and kind of what audience to go after with these flows. While then only afterwards you're actually going to go into the heavy work of validating the product and building it. And I think kind of that's an interesting mechanic where it decouples kind of the marketing work from the product work, and you can build a very, very nice funnel without even having anything afterwards. That's kind of, for me, another benefit of this. Anything to add from your end, Elise?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at your marketing mix and you're looking at your spend, and if you're encountering the classic challenges that come with scaling classic app campaigns, like trying to push your scale, having your CPA go up, web offers that different audience and that different algo. So it's a way for you to add more growth without stressing out your current structure and learning from your best creatives, your best audiences insights, and apply it to something else. And something I will add is what I've seen working with clients when I was in an agency and also internally, is that in order to crack it, you need a specific workflow and a intentional focus to be unlocked. It's not like a channel that you can just turn on and off, like testing, a TikTok or testing a Snapchat. You have to be quite focused on making it work from the creative to the funnel to the app.
Yeah, totally agreed. We already mentioned a few channels here. Like, what have you been running Web2App campaigns on? Like, where do they see them being a good fit?
I mean, mainly Meta, because I think it's the easiest one to validate your testing and getting some good, even if it's like Meta reported revenue, you can validate something and compare it and measure it. I've recently been testing it on TikTok, and in terms of CPA, it's quite comparable. I think in terms of testing, it's not as flexible and it suffers from more volatility. But I know that advertisers are also using it for Google search, for example. And another use case would be if you're doing some organic marketing, you can use it as like a soft onboarding that is a bit less aggressive than sending people straight to the App Store.
Yeah. Ioana, I think you also had some points around like search and like
exactly,
tailoring it to different intent stages, right?
Yeah, I would say the same. So yeah, Google search and generic keywords, I would say it's a good fit. Yeah, but also native advertising could work. I think there are different angles to it.
Yeah. I remember when I was at Blinkist, like native ads were like really, really big. I'm not sure if they still are. Kind of I would say most of our traffic at the time went to like blog articles where we kind of presented ourselves quite nicely. And so there is that step of like going to the web already, but then we still converted in the app. Like, is that anything you kind of changed in the recent history? Are you converting these people on the web as well?
Yeah, I think it can be tested in different ways, right? You can also go to the app directly. You can also go to the web. It really depends.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, on Meta, like I also I always think of the channel as not just being one. In the end, it's kind of Instagram and Facebook in the first place, but then even traffic by placement just like is so different. And definitely web campaigns just allow to tap into completely different audiences. They're usually like for apps that are targeting a bit younger, web enables them to go into older audiences with higher purchase power. I'm seeing placement distribution to be skewed much more towards feed usually. And that also then usually comes with, first and foremost, like different user quality and having to set up kind of a different tech stack because you have to send events through copy. So yeah, as you mentioned, Elise, it's not like quick tests. Usually, like once you start looking into it, there is a lot of nuance to it of getting something live. And then, of course, also due to the different placement mix and due to the funnel just behaving differently, as kind of every ad click hits the funnel, and it's not that you have kind of the app store in between that filters out people before they go into an app onboarding. I see creative strategies differing quite a bit. Is there kind of what are the differences that you're seeing there, or do you tailor your creatives to the different flows?
I mean, ideally, yes, because again, it's not exactly the same audience and there are some overlap. Web skews a bit older. So for example, if you're doing a lot of UGC with Gen Z creators, I would try maybe an older creator pool to be more relatable. But I would say a winner in app campaigns can also very well be a winner in web funnel. So I wouldn't stop myself from rolling it out. I think it's kind of like similar from what you're seeing in creative overlap between some channels. If you have something very strong, why not testing it in web? I think you can do things like web-specific iterations of taking your winners and changing things slightly to make them better on web. For example, Rana does that with changing the CTA to sign up online. So there's not a disappointment when they click on the ad, they actually sign up for the experience online. You can, I think, also take the web funnel content as a creative itself and use it for your ads, and this way have like a strong conversion rate between the ad that is actually going to look like the funnel. So you can play around with a lot of things. I think in an ideal world, you should be doing like a web specific pipeline, but if you want to be a bit more agile, you can just adapt what you have and start testing.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of treat it quite similarly. I tend to, or like usually I will try what I produce for app promotion flows as well, just because the creative is there anyways. But then over time, I saw that basically you do figure out like which types might be better fit here and there. And then sometimes I won't test ads anymore on the web flow if I already know, okay, this often never works. I've seen good success with kind of incorporating parts of the quiz into the ads already, so people get prepared for hitting a quiz and not the app store or something else. Also, like quiz specific messaging, just really making sure you're creating that coherent funnel. Because usually kind of one of the biggest drop-off points on your quiz is going to be the first slide, and there is a lot to be done if you make sure that the ad is actually fit for what comes after. And kind of over time, that might even mean having a whole lot of different flows based on different messaging angles that you then tailor the ads to. So let's maybe pretend we're kind of starting a new funnel from scratch, and we want to basically test the topic for the company we're at. Like how would you go about it of building a V1 funnel and getting it live as quickly as possible? Of course, maybe Ioana first.
Yeah, I will start with the infrastructure, to be honest, with the question of the infrastructure. So making sure that you have what you need to create that customization based on the creative. So I think that's one of the first things, choosing the right tool, or making sure that the infrastructure in your environment allows that. Then also, so the idea is to have an ease of customizing the flows here, and then reliable testing capabilities, because it will require a lot of testing, and also tracking. So even web funnels are also recommended for improved tracking, but it needs to be ensured it's done correctly. So it does have an advantage, but there needs to be attention on it. So I would say that part needs to be first ensured. And then when it comes to, okay, what exactly are we going to do with the web funnel? I see two approaches here. One is to study the competition and see what fits your audience. So it's still very important, I think, to understand your audience deeply and understand what clicks with them. But it's obvious that you would look at what competitors are doing, and you take the best practices from there, and you customize accordingly to the audience needs, according to, at the beginning, to your intuition. And then, of course, if you already had, going back to your point, Elise, if you already have an app onboarding that works, I would also recommend to customize that for web and see how it goes. And from there, you can improve further. These are the two ways I would recommend doing it.
Maybe some quick feedback on that second one before I give it over to you, Julie. I also used to recommend that, and I was like, okay, that's kind of the easy path. But then so many apps just have a terrible app onboarding, and then they bring it to the web.
If you have a good one that works.
And they wonder why it's a terrible web onboarding. I think in the end, the web onboarding has to even do a better job than the app onboarding, just because the app store is missing. You're not getting that credibility. People aren't in their kind of in that surrounding that they know, where they can get the information on, okay, this is highly rated. What are the reviews? Is this relevant to me? So all of that needs to build into the funnel. So I think even if you have a great app onboarding, then you will have to start adding additional pieces into it to make a good web onboarding.
For sure.
And if your app onboarding is just quite technical, and there's, I don't know, a sign up and a push permission request and some other permissions, and then that's it. Like if it's all that technical on the web, then it's going to be really tough for you to kind of convert that very upper funnel cold traffic that is just coming from an ad click they saw on a discovery platform. Yeah, just my 2 cents here.
I totally agree. But if you have something that is going into the direction of a web onboarding, meaning more in-depth questions, getting to know, getting to explain the value proposition, and closing the gap of the transformation question, then it would make sense, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. How about you, Elise?
I think for me, it's a very similar approach as creative research when you're a UA manager, which means that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to think about something completely from scratch. There are so many flows out there. It's not a new product. I know it's like the new hot thing, but in reality, a lot of apps have been doing this for a long time. So there are dominant flow structures, which means that there's a lot of data behind them. There's a lot of ad spend behind them. And it's a good way to get some best practices. So they're not going to be the same across all verticals. They will be different for health and fitness, for language learning, for education, but they tend to follow a very similar path. So I think you can take that path and make it your own with your branding, with your unique selling point, with your actual value and what makes your app special. But you don't have to rethink and reinvent everything from scratch if you want to move fast and test something. And there are a lot of resources available. You're also not completely alone. There are tools, there's AI, there's FunnelFox, and there are best practices around. I remember when I wanted to build a flow myself, I started from zero and I spent a whole day listening to podcasts or to webinars. There's a lot of really good resources around that tell you how to approach it and what to do. So I think it's completely doable if you study the industry and if you study your vertical.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's close to like creative ideation, just it can be a bit overwhelming, because then if you I don't know, if you want to kind of get learnings from something like the Noom quiz, and then you have to go through 120 slides and try to understand what's going on there,
Yes,
it gets a bit tricky.
I have done that.
But yeah, ultimately, kind of there is big players out there who
Yeah.
are excelling at this, and you can quickly learn from that. I've been using like AI more for this. Like
Yeah.
something like Claude is really good at
Yeah.
these kind of things. You can kind of set up a project, give it the context of like what your app is about, upload your user reviews so that it learns about the language that your users are speaking, what they think is kind of the benefits to them. And then it can take up to, I think, 20 screenshots at a time. So if you just kind of grab a competitor flow and say, hey, this is relevant to me, I want to use the structure, it will do a pretty good job at understanding, hey, like what's happening on those questions, what's kind of the narrative arc here. Are they going from like, what are kind of the psychological triggers they're using, and then helping you to adapt that to yours. It's not going to be perfect, but it's a really good starting point. And then you kind of have this sparring partner that you can just ask, hey, I'm thinking about doing this way. What do you think about it? And that's kind of a good learning experience, I think, as you're starting out.
And the advantage is that if you set up your analytics correctly, you will get some pretty granular results, and you'll be able to iterate and change any step that's not working well.
Yeah, that's a good segue. So yeah, like what are the things that can be working well, can't be working well? What are kind of the best practices once you start optimizing a flow? Like, what should I be looking at? Ioana, maybe you go first.
So the way I look at the web onboarding is from a marketing perspective purely, is that it has the goal to build trust in my view, right? So that's the ultimate goal. And also, it needs to convince the users that you understand them, that you understand the pain points they have, and that you can respond to their needs. So very much highlighting that transformation. I think if this can be done, by definition, it's a good web onboarding because naturally it convinces them to convert. So the key ingredients to achieve that for me are asking questions with purpose. So really proving within the app onboarding that whenever you ask a question, you also personalized real time, you show how exactly that contributes to the solution. So that's quite important. Then demonstrate value proposition. And that's easier said than done because you need to do it in a way that really fits. And show trust signals. This is also very important in a sales process, basically. And what we also observed is that it's very important to reward them. So I kind of see as a pacing, you ask something, you give something. So it's that rewarding, creating excitement during the web onboarding, because typically it's a longer process. It convinces users to continue, to finish the web onboarding, basically, and to engage them early on.
Yeah, I like that kind of making sure there's variety and like some education, some questions, some animations if you kind of are getting more advanced, so that it just doesn't get boring. If you have like 50 questions after each other, even though drop off is minimal on each, it's just going to get very boring over time. Yeah, what about you, Elise? What would be the break-off points that you would be tackling first with this?
I think Ioana's points are really good. You take something, you give something. Any way to give a snapshot of the value that is based on your vertical. So an assessment test if it's education, sample if it's a sound or a video, if it's like a filter app, can you give them a quick way to play around with some features, like a gamified version of your main app feature. It's a bit more advanced, but I think it's such a wonderful way to show value that wouldn't be replicable on the App Store. So I think it's a really good advantage. And I think like a super simple thing, but showing a sense of progression when you have all those questions is so important. And from a UI perspective, it's super easy, but I think it matters so much because you don't want to be in a situation where you've asked someone to answer 45 questions and they've done all of this for nothing. You want to give an impression that you care about those answers, and in an ideal world, you are passing all this information through your tracking analytics to their profile. So when they arrive on the app, they're already set up to use it correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like the part of like delivering some form of value, because in the end, like, or like to me, most of the questions in the quiz are just made to kind of make the user understand that they kind of have a problem and make them very aware, make them feel that pain, and then show them how my product is going to help them solve it.
Mhm.
But then, of course, for the user, to sell them, hey, you're going to have to answer 40 questions, they want to get more out of it than just feeling a pain and being sold something. So yeah, I think kind of the very good quizzes, they deliver some sort of assessment at the end, or like some mini product, as you said, so that you're creating this aha moment already where they feel like, hey, this is cool.
Mhm.
And from there, it's much easier to then show a paywall and get them into the app than if you just ask 40 questions and then they see a sign up and a paywall without any kind of additional value delivered before that. Yeah, other than that, like, to me, yeah, kind of, I see these quizzes really like horoscopes or like personality type quests. It's all like, all the questions are really just made to make users feel like, yeah, that's me. So, and then usually I try moving from like shallow to getting deeper and deeper to make them like moving closer to my product. But yeah, it really makes sense to think of like the stage the user is in, and there is like clicking on an ad somewhere on the Instagram feed and then directly getting dumped into a quiz. That's just a totally different kind of stage and audience than someone that makes it into your app onboarding. So that's also why kind of that first part of the quiz, I think, is super important to like be coherent with what your ad is communicating, and then kind of warming up people for the idea of actually going to a quiz. So I think like many of these quizzes start with like an age or gender question, just because it's like an easy one to give. It's a no-brainer, and it gets you into the habit of kind of clicking through. While then, of course, also starting on just an age selection isn't like super relevant necessarily for like your product. So I think there's a lot to be tested here on that upper funnel. And then, yeah, the other drop-off points I usually see are around sign up and that aha moment, if you have one or not. And then, of course, the paywall, which is kind of the biggest one here. And I usually actually tend to start by doing some like price experiments and try to figure out like what can we actually charge here, because it can look quite different from what your app is charging. Yeah, maybe that's something to dive into a bit deeper. Like how are you approaching pricing on web? Is it similar to what you do in the app? Is it totally different? Do you have different quizzes with different prices? How does that look? Elise, want to go first?
Sure. So the best practice is, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. I remember previously trying to set up free trial in a web funnel and then have a choice between a free trial and a subscription. And although more people were getting to the free trial, the challenge was then to port that free trial over to the app successfully. And that created more friction to bring that, to unlock the free trial, if that makes sense. It was more like an analytics-based issue. So if you want to avoid that, then make the web funnel a paying only experience, but then you can experiment with discounted offers. So for example, users that land on your web funnel get 20%, 30%, 50% of what they would have if they went through the app and then had the free trial. The advantage with that as well is that you're getting more signals back when you're launching with Meta, because you have more paying events happening rather than free trials. It's kind of interesting. And then I think you can apply some best practices like breaking down the price by day rather than monthly or weekly or yearly, so it looks more attractive. It's a good place to experiment, I would say.
Yeah. I like actually the you can apply a lot of like payment pricing psychology that you wouldn't on the app, because then Apple doesn't like all of it. And you can get really creative here and like use a lot of kind of the e-com playbook of like what makes a price very attractive, like how big is the font, what colors to choose, discounted prices, displaying like a strike-through price next to it. So definitely there's a lot of uplift there, while then also I feel like it's quite, like if you look at the pricing modules of most of the big quizzes, there is definitely kind of this best practice look to it that is gonna convert best, it seems. It's interesting that you're saying that like on the web you might even charge less. Like usually I go higher for those older people. But the Signal one is definitely like a really good call out. Yeah, it's kind of like I tend to not do any free trials on the web just because I've seen very high cancellations in the end, and like people where we couldn't even charge them because they just gave us a credit card with nothing on it. And therefore I tend to, on the trial products, always do a pay trial, and otherwise then kind of direct purchase of subscriptions, which like can be very profitable right away, but then still the CPA is going to be higher, and to get enough volume onto like a new campaign can be tricky. And then if you want to do creative testing additionally just on web, that at like events that cost like $30-40, it's hard, that's for sure, and something to consider. So maybe lower pricing does make sense for that. I'm seeing a lot of like very like gray area things happening here with like just very high like weekly pricing, and then introductory offer 70% off, and the week after it converts, like the weekly offer converts to a price that you usually would charge for like a yearly or something. So people are going a bit crazy here, and I wonder if it's going to harm this whole tactic as a
it's difficult because I think as marketers, we, like when you go through the app store, you kind of trust the app store to take care of, like the processes like renewal, cancellation, and it's almost like an existing system where you can plug and play. But with web, you do have to think about cancellation, you do have to think about renewal, you do have to think about communicating to users a lot more outside of your normal flow. So for example, you have to work with CRM more than you would usually, because you have to make sure that when people pay for subscription on web, they get some kind of confirmation, or they get some kind of transparency about what they paid for, that if they paid on app, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's part of why it works, because it's easier to forget. I'm not sure what part of it, but high retention isn't just because it's better users and a better product. Ioana, how are you pricing things at Blinkist? Is that higher, lower, same?
Well, it depends on the audience, right? Again, if the strategy of using web onboardings, web to web, or web to app, however you want to call it, is to attract older, higher purchase power audiences, then you can afford to have a higher price on the paywall on the web as well. Yearly subscriptions going to durations are still quite recommended because of the high retention. So they do have certain advantages. But if you're going after a different type of audience, then I would agree you need to refine the pricing and the duration of the payment plans, or to start with a lower offer and then try upselling while as soon as they have already purchased the app. What else? I think also on the web, going back to what Elise said, it's going more of in the direction of a sales page, right? In e-commerce, where you really have to make very visible the low risk cues, like money back guarantee, cancellation policy, answering FAQs, reviews, and so on and so forth, right? So it's going more into really into the e-commerce mindset. Which I find super interesting.
Yeah, totally. Actually, I studied a ton of like e-commerce landing pages for like looking up like different modules they're using, since they're kind of one step further there, I think, and like they're doing all these things with like founder stories and showing that they're eco-friendly and all these things. I think not all of it applies in the end to subscription apps, but then there is a lot of learnings to be taken from like what can you put on these like very long sales pages in the end. Elise, you already touched on like collaborating with CRM and other teams to make this work. Let's maybe chat a bit about this, like how. I mean, first of all, like who are you collaborating with maybe currently on this? And then like what does that collaboration look like to make it successful?
Sure. So yeah, to start, I think web funnels are something we discuss a lot in the UA space. And I think everyone gets why it's great and why we should push it. But I think especially smaller teams are overwhelmed by, wait, how do we actually make it work? How do we do it? Because it touches other parts of the business that are not contained to UA and creative. So I think in order to make it work, you have to collaborate with product quite a lot. You have to collaborate with lifecycle, so CRM. And you almost have to create a little team across departments where you work together to build a web funnel. That process, I think, of building a web funnel is more product-like to me than marketing-like, because there are a lot of processes like tracking between platform, analytics, responsiveness of page, integration, QA. They're all generally part of product. So what I've been doing for the past few months is I've been sitting in a lot of product meetings to understand the workflow, understand how they work directly with developer, understand the tools, and then apply that to building a web funnel efficiently. Because last year I went to a Meta event, and it was about web funnel, and I remember the number one thing two founders that cracked web funnel were saying is that someone need to really dedicate their time to it. And whereas this person is in UA and product, I think it's a bit better that person is in UA, because then they'll have an understanding of the full funnel, what that looks like once they launch the campaigns, and they can optimize it better from upper funnel to lower funnel. But there's a need for, I think, someone to really own the project and work across product, marketing, creative, and a little bit of life cycle too, to really crack it.
Yeah, agreed. Like I actually also like having things like QA in there and making sure it's the process is just functioning is something I tend to work with, like very or like early to mid stage. Usually it's very lean. I'm allowed to like just do whatever on these flows myself. But then without QA, like checking every variant that I come up with, things can just break pretty quickly. So that was definitely a good learning for me as well, that I need to be a bit more organized on these. And while it feels easy to adjust them when you use kind of a no-code builder, it can have big implications.
And it's what's the big differences is just different approaches. In UA, we tend to do something really fast, even if it's not perfect. Like I've briefed ads. I wasn't like 100% happy with the results, but I still launched them because the idea is there. You can't really do that with a funnel. I think you have to make sure it's not broken. All the links work, all the questions are good, the paywall works. So it requires a lot more testing. It requires being more perfectionist, which falls more under product. But I think the good news is that they will teach you. You can learn that, and I think what's been really rewarding too is bringing some UA perspective to the product and developers. So they tend to work on app experiences where it's quite slow to see results and it's quite slow to test. With web funnels, we can make some very quick and agile testing, and you get to share those results and that data with the team quite quickly to make decisions and change it. So I think that's been the exciting part that UA brings to the process.
Yeah, I mean, generally always good if you collaborate closer and there's not that siloed thinking. How about you, Ioana? How are you doing this at Blinkist? How many people are working on the topic?
I am definitely working on the topic, so but it's I mean, Blinkist is also a bigger company, right? So there is a product team dedicated to marketing, to CRO, and this makes
Nice.
things much easier, right? Because then you're really playing in the same team, so to say. So there is no discussion of silos. So basically, UA and myself and the product team is basically working together towards the same goal, which is working very well, I have to say. So yeah, those silos do not exist in this case. And I think it's really important because, again, going back to our discussion, the web funnel needs to work from the ad creative up to the conversion and afterwards. Very important as well, because there is a big opportunity to follow up with people that finalized the onboarding but didn't purchase, right? They are worm. It's a low-hanging fruit there that is just sitting to be nurtured. So definitely the collaboration goes product, UA, product, and CRM afterwards.
Yeah.
Makes complete sense. And in e-commerce, it would happen the same. Going back to, so you definitely have to follow up with the warm leads there.
Yeah. How many flows are you working on? If you have like a dedicated team, are you allowed to go a bit more into detail there?
What do you mean? You mean how customized it is?
Yeah, kind of like, do you have, I don't know, like 4 different marketing angles? Are you working on like 20 funnels that all look totally differently, or is it like one main one that is then just personalized throughout based on the answers? How does that work? Because it feels like if there's a whole team working on this full time,
it's not working full time on only the web funnel, right? I didn't mean that. I meant that the product team is dedicated to marketing. So that's what I meant. Not dedicated to the web funnel alone. That was not what I intended to say.
Okay. It sounded like a very high priority on the topic. Which
no.
Nice. Maybe let's kind of wrap it up with like just talking a bit about like different use cases for Web2App. We touched a bit on it in the beginning, but like beyond just kind of quizzes, web onboarding, and then kind of converting people on the web, like what other types of flows do you see? How do you leverage those? Elise, want to go first?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier is if you have a working link that you're happy with and you have a working funnel, there's a lot of ways you can use it. For example, if you're doing some organic or you're doing some social, you have a link. So if you have a post that goes viral and people engage with it a lot, why not directing them to the web funnel? It's pretty easy, it's quite engaging, and you can get the user interested in your app without being too salesy. And I think what I've also seen is taking the Web2App build as a base for other use cases. So like a discount after cancellation, where you don't have to have all those onboarding questions, but you can keep the same structure with offer and paywall. Like Ioana mentioned, if you have some warm leads, why not making a simpler funnel with less onboarding and a discount offer, because they've already seen your content and you can re-engage them with some questions. There's also, I think Paired does quite a lot of like web where you land on a page with a very nice visual and then a QR code where you land into the app. So there's a lot of ways you can kind of deviate from like your traditional web quiz.
Yeah, totally. Any other ones you'd want to add, Ioana?
Well, my hypothesis is very simple. I would recommend quizzes, longer web onboarding for low intent audiences, because again, the goal here is to demonstrate that you can solve their problem, their needs. While for channels that provide higher intent users, basically you can also use a dedicated landing page and then going directly to the purchase, such as I'm thinking here, branded keywords. Google search is one example. You would use for generic keywords a different flow than for branded keywords. That is a simple example to emphasize what I meant.
Yeah. Or also like I remember like influencer pages where like we kind of, I think Blinkist created like specific ones for each influencer, and then each of them had their own kind of discount code to convert right there. Also higher intent, shorter flow. Makes a lot of sense, I think. The flow you mentioned, Elise, with the QR code, that's, yeah. So the QR code is displayed on desktop, of course, and then on the phone, actually, you usually get redirected right away to the App Store. So it's kind of this hybrid flow where the idea is just to be able to use like web campaigns on Meta or other platforms without even differing the flow at all. You kind of get auto redirected to the App Store anyways, but even just through being able to use a web campaign, you're getting access to these different audiences, and even that can already be a win. So that's kind of a quite low effort experiment that apps can run, especially if you're tend to target quite young. If your app attracts younger users, then that's a good way to maybe break into some older audiences and see if that can be profitable. And also it comes with all the benefits of web tracking. So a lot more data than the blended data you're getting from your app promotion flows. Nice. Yeah, anything else you wanted to talk about? Otherwise, we have around about 50 minutes left and could go into Q&A.
Let's do the Q&As then.
Cool. Then I'll scroll up. Let's see where we started. So Andreas asked as the first question, I think, I'd love to hear about expectations when you're first switching to web funnels. For context, our app funnel has around 7% conversion to paying. We also have app ads that are performing well on Meta. Our hope is to spend around 1K per day reusing our existing ads and copying our existing onboarding with some of the recommended web-specific updates. Elise, maybe that's...
Yeah. That's a really good question. I think to me, because the campaign type is different, the CPM is going to be different, and the algo is going to be a bit different. I look at it in terms of conversions, and I give a little bit more time to web campaigns to convert because it takes more purchases for them to exit the learning phase. So it's kind of like you alternate optimizing the upper funnel, so optimizing the campaign type, the audience, the optimization, the creatives with the funnel itself. And you kind of like go back and forth until you can increase your ROAS. I think there's some good low-hanging fruits with like sign up and paywall within the funnel you can work on. But yeah, in short, it's going to take a bit more time than just validating app campaigns to make it work.
Yeah, I would say so as well. Conversion events tend to be more expensive if you don't offer a free trial. And yeah, also like if you can just port your onboarding from the app in the end, it depends on how good that onboarding is and whether it's kind of a fit. And then, I mean, Andreas, you already said that you are going to think about implementing some of the web-specific kind of recommendations, and then definitely do that because, yeah, again, everyone from that ad will see your funnel, and there is no app store that kind of does the job of adding credibility and giving context, and that stuff that you will have to think about when building out your funnel. Reusing the same ads, as we also discussed, can work if they are a good fit for the funnel. Like I often seen that, I don't know, like with app ads, they can be quite weird at times. It's not like an e-com ad that shows the product and it's just very clear that I'm being sold to and this is what I'm getting. Sometimes they can be very meta, where it's just some visuals and they're like very clicky, interesting, but still perform. If your ads are kind of less specific, using these kind of very product-focused messaging frameworks, then I've seen that being tough to like use them on web, because oftentimes people click into it with no idea what's going to happen. If they then hit the app store, they just know what to look for, and then they can still decide to install an app. If that just opens a random page with like a claim on it and some visual, then oftentimes they're gone. So it really depends a bit on the type of ads you're using.
And I would say also to keep an eye on CPM trends, because we're not looking at app campaign CPMs, we're looking at e-com CPMs. So they follow different trends that I think are more impacted by shopping seasonality than app campaigns. So, for example, there's going to be countries that are really hard to crack from the start compared to app campaigns.
Another question we had was what's the approximate time to stabilize a funnel, as in kind of being able to run it at stable results, being a part of the marketing mix and not just an experiment. Anyone has any experience with that? Otherwise, I can, or like,
yeah.
I'm not sure if there's like an approximate time. Like in the end, there's so many variables in this. I would say sometimes even early on, at least on Meta, I see that you can have like this launch effect where basically Meta is very good at getting you like a good audience early on if you serve them the right signals. And then it might even be that for 2 or 3 weeks, a month, like things are looking good and you feel like, wow, like we've cracked it, maybe even on first try. But then it's downhill afterwards because then things start fatiguing and you're not hitting that kind of ideal audience anymore. So it's really hard to say like an approximate time. It really depends on how good of a job you do in that first round on the funnel. And again, if your ads are a good fit for what you're trying to achieve there. But it is, or like for me, it definitely takes a while. The whole topic, like first time looking into it, it feels like, okay, like we just copy a funnel from somewhere and we set it up and that's it. But then the whole setup and like getting the ad settings right tends to take quite a bit. So like from first idea to like making it a stable part of the marketing mix, it's definitely going to be a few months rather than weeks.
It takes a while. And it's, oh, sorry, go for it.
Plus the testing, right? The optimization part, which is, endless.
But yeah, of course. And yeah, as soon as you want to scale it, then CPAs go up and then you need to find wins across the funnel to fight that. So it's kind of, it's a whole nother product that you need to optimize forever, basically.
Yeah, it's a fight. Like it's a fight against time. Just like when you find a creative winner, you can't relax. You have to find the next one. And the funnel's the same thing, but with a lot more dimensions.
So stressful. Why are we doing this? What's your best way to monitor competitors in their web funnels? Or how are competitors monitoring the Blinkist funnels?
They go into the web funnel and so follow the competitors, right? But I think there are other strategies that I'm not a specialist in, but you can use the ad library, right? See where the traffic is going. There are some best practices there that you can talk more about than myself, but typically following the competitors, going into the funnels. To be honest, me personally, I like going through them by myself and not only looking at screenshots because I want to experience myself, the rewards, the aha moments, etc. So for me, but that's a personal take on it. I don't have the same experience when I look on a board with the screens than when I am experiencing this myself.
What are you using, Elise?
I'm also spending my entire life on the ads library. I have like 20 apps I just stalk every single day, and I've been doing that for years. But also seriously, like the thing I was saying is that there are so many resources out there. I think a couple months ago, someone published a Miro board with all the best in class funnels across the industry in different verticals. And what's really great is that those kind of resources are kind of being published every day. So if you follow the right people and keep an eye on it, there's no reason that you should be missing best practices. I think the information is out there.
But only if you comment funnel to access that board.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. I think, also, the tech is getting better and better, and there seems to be like new like startups launching every week that are kind of solving these things. So I recently started using Screens Design, which now also not only has app onboardings but Web2App onboardings as well that you can look into. For grabbing kind of full flows for competitors, there is Flow River, I think it's called, or so there you can input a URL and it's going to get you like a Figma file with the whole thing. And yeah, all of that can kind of speed you up and make sure that you can look at a little more than one funnel at a time. But yeah, otherwise also ads library is where I kind of mostly look at stuff. You will quickly be able to identify like on how the ad is displayed, if it's a web or an app promotion ad. And then if it's a web app, then either it's using this hybrid approach of linking to the App Store while using a web campaign, or it's going to go into a quiz mostly. And then you can kind of save down these URLs, see how they evolve over time. Could you please recommend some of the podcasts that you mentioned about? I think that's for you, Elise.
I think you might have been on one. I think Thomas Petit might have been on one. Honestly, just type
probably.
Like it's quite easy to find. I do remember watching a YouTube interview of someone from Headway, if I remember correctly.
Probably.
Yeah. So I think resources are out there, and I did that like really deep dive about a year ago, so I'm sure there's a lot more.
Yeah. On YouTube, I'm sure like all the webinars go there in the end. So Funnel Fox has a lot of cool content on this. Yeva has been presenting at like a promotion summit and so on, a few interesting talks on the topic from Headway. And then I think generally also on LinkedIn, if you follow Andre from Funnel Fox and other people in the industry, then usually there are some good nuggets there that will get you up to speed. Skipped one here around infrastructure requirements and tracking. What's the delta when it comes to running app campaigns on Meta? So like what do you need on top of what you would need for running app promotion campaigns? I think, Ioana, you talked about the infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be able to answer this specific question, but in general, the web onboarding provides more tracking opportunities, right? So I'm not sure how to answer the question.
Yeah. I mean, for me, like what you need on top is definitely like you have to think about what happens at the end of that quiz. And that's for me the most critical part of like thinking about tech. So like how do you get people that purchase a subscription into the app? Mm-hmm. And that's definitely something I underestimated before setting up my first quiz, where it was like, okay, yeah, they paid, so what do I care? But in the end, it's like people will get lost. Like it's pretty common to see at least like 20% of like subscribers that never actually open the app while having paid before. So it's like really important that you kind of figure out what are those pieces there. So CRM needs to kind of work and sync there. You need kind of an email software that then helps you send like email the login details to everyone at that point. You will preferably also have an MMP that allows you to do deferred deep linking, so people can directly click on a link that sends them through the App Store into the app and logs them in. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the pieces that are most interesting there. And then otherwise, like in terms of tracking, usually you can use similar tools to what you use for your promotion stack. So like a mix panel can also be fed with all the events happening on the web funnel. So you can look at kind of how people go through that funnel similarly to how you would do it on your app onboarding. So that doesn't necessarily need to be different. And on the UA channel front, like in the end, you will be tracking events through Conversion API and maybe the pixel on top. And for that, in the end, it's just kind of different documentation for your devs to go through in order to be implemented. But generally, web tracking is a bit more reliable than app tracking these days. So actually, that should be simpler and probably a lift compared to what you're doing on the app front. Resources we talked about. And Elise, you mentioned that you do a test around older cohorts and users. From your point of view, would you say that for app with a younger demographic, 10 to 21-year-olds, using a funnel won't be an effective strategy? 10 to 21, okay.
Very young demographic. Maybe you can target their parents and onboard the parents. Yeah, I mean, It really depends. I think I've been in both situations where I've launched a web funnel for 25 plus right off the bat because I know I want to convert those users. And then you can also try to set all ages and see actually what you're attracting and who you're converting. Something I would add, Marcus, to your tracking analytics. So you'll be able to get a good amount of signals on Meta. They're not exact, but they're a really good point of comparison to make decisions based on like CPA or like conversion rate, even if they're not exact. So I think you can probably start there. I would have to know what your app is to to understand this better. I think I'm very
Yeah, that would be interesting. I would feel like if this is really kind of your core audience and the app doesn't make sense for anyone that is older, then maybe Web2App isn't the main priority I would be looking into, because definitely like the younger the users, the more they're used to like using an app as kind of the native way to doing things. And then kind of sending them to something where they have to input credit card information for payment is just going to be weird to them. I mean, you can also have Apple Pay at the end of it, but usually I would say like web rather is the better platform for older audiences, and the younger ones I would usually send straight to the app. But yeah, depends if there's older audiences that are interesting, you're just not accessing them right now, then maybe that's the way to go to actually be able and go after them. We're at 6 p.m. now. Are you okay with running over a bit? Should we do a few more questions?
Yeah, sure. Yep.
Yeah, sure. Then let's do that. One of our app web funnels, positioning, doesn't perform really well in Meta Ads conversion into purchase. So we use mainly Google for promoting this type of funnel. Is it possible that poor conversion is related to a niche? It just doesn't work within Meta audience, or the problem is more on our marketing side? Elise, any thoughts?
I would have to see the data.
Yeah.
So the thing with a web funnel is that there are so many more dimensions of what could work and what could not work than just click on the creative app store app. So it really depends. I think if it didn't work for Meta, my question would be, have you tried different creative formats? Have you tried different countries? Have you tried different audience? Are you optimizing towards the right event? Like at every point between the creative to the web funnel to payment, what the conversion looks like, and see where you can improve it. I wouldn't rule out Meta as just not working well, because typically for web funnel, I think it's the dominant channel. So maybe you need to refine the process a little bit before rolling it out.
Yeah. And I think it can also come down to like what Ioana said before, basically, whom are you targeting here? Like, are you running this on Google search where there's going to be like a very high intent audience? And then if your funnel is just tailored to that audience, it might just be working better than with a cold audience on a discovery channel like Meta. So yeah, it really depends on like what do your creatives look like? What does the funnel look like? Which audience are you after? I also wouldn't say that kind of something is like, or like, I wouldn't think of it as in like the channel, but like what's the audience behind that and how are you talking to them? In the end, the channel shouldn't matter as much. What are your best strategies for building high-impact upsell structures or funnel stages to maximize LTV, especially when not offering a free trial? That's maybe a good one for Ioana.
Yeah, I would recommend if you have different plans to start with the lower priced one, and then offer add-ons. It's becoming more and more popular to have a mix of subscription and lifetime payments or add-ons within the app. So I would definitely recommend that as an upsell strategy, going with the lower price, getting the customers in, and then offering extras, so to say.
Interesting. Do you already offer a lot throughout the funnel, or is that in the app then?
Within the app after they convert it, that's what I meant.
Okay. So they would come in as like a weekly or monthly subscriber, and then in the app you start selling them more stuff.
You can sell more stuff in terms of add-ons or higher priced plans, basically.
Yeah, because I also see a lot of like where even within the funnel you are sold like 5 additional products already, some PDFs and this and that, and then by the end of the funnel, if you chose a weekly, they ask you upgrade to the yearly now at like 20% discount. And once you finally hit that checkout page, you are not even aware of all these things that are going to be in your cart.
Yeah, I find it a little bit confusing that way of going. I would rather go with minimizing cognitive effort and making sure we build trust. But yeah, that's also an approach.
Okay, let's maybe do 2 more. Next one would be, can you please speak a bit more about the process of the web funnel testing? Are you actually looking for statistical significance, just signals? Which uplift are you looking for? And if you are doing pricing and packaging testing, at which metrics are you looking at? Average revenue per user, per paying user, CAC, ROAS, etc.
Should I answer that?
Yeah.
Okay. Very good question, first of all. I recommend looking at statistical significance. The reason is that if you take the wrong decisions, it can have a negative impact further on. So the more confidence you have that a test is a winner, the better you are off, in my opinion, because you can basically have a false positive, and then you are hurting the bottom line. So yeah, I usually go after statistical significance, and uplifts, I would say anything above 3-5% is something to look for. And doing pricing and packaging in general in testing, I would look at average revenue per user, conversion rates, but then also the impact on ROIs, it's important overall. But for the test, for taking decisions on the test themselves, I would say average revenue per user, conversion rates, and then monitoring the impact on the business.
Yeah, I would say the way you think about statistical significance, of course, comes with having probably a lot of traffic at Blinkist. I think like at these earlier stages, it can be tough. That's why, like early on, I would say always test like big swings and like try to make up for not a lot of volume through then a big change in terms of conversion rate or ARPU, so that kind of therefore you're moving closer to statistical significance. Don't start by, I don't know, testing messaging on like a certain question or something. That's just not going to move the needle as much. Really come up like, I don't know, like test big differences in pricing, what your paywall looks like. I don't know, like really removing or adding full blocks of like questions that are kind of themed for a certain cause, so that you really kind of see a big difference. And then even if you see it actually hurts performance, I would say that's a win, because oftentimes early on it's just hard to know what actually does anything. So I'm already happy if I see, hey, this kind of tanked performance by 30%, but we know within a week, and then that was a good experiment.
Yeah. Whatever decision you take is going to affect the duration that you're taking the decisions on. So you have to balance that.
I think it's more frustrating when there's like a tiny difference, but nothing moves the needle, than a big up or a big down.
Yeah, totally. If you're like never sure, and I've been there, like testing for weeks and weeks and weeks, and every test feels like, okay, we didn't do anything.
We did nothing. Yes.
Okay, I'll scroll a bit down and use like one last question randomly. Maybe go to the end. What's the average percentage of users who buy in web but don't register in the app? So kind of the drop off from after kind of purchasing. As I said, like I saw it being as high as like 40-50%. If your kind of emails aren't tuned in, you're maybe having deliverability issues. or kind of you're not using deferred deep linking, it can be really hard for people kind of to make their way to the app, because I think the user behavior is just, they're done with it and they think like, okay, I'm going to get an email I'm going to look into afterwards, and then they forget about it. But then based on talking to people in the industry, I never heard anyone that kind of brought it higher than like, I don't know, 85%, maybe 90, but there's always going to be some people that buy but don't make it.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any benchmarks you can share from your experiments? Or any best practices on how to get people into the app? I'd also be interested.
Immediately after the purchase. Absolutely immediately after.
I think really like trying to build a flow with the user in mind to guide them, because we work in the app business. For us, it's obvious once we made the payment to download the app. There's definitely a drop-off. But after payment, have a very clear page that tells you, okay, like now that you've paid, follow this link. If this link doesn't work, go to the app store. But then if you capture their email via the flow, also send them an email saying the exact same thing, providing access to FAQ, probably providing access to customer support and help within that email, just to make sure you're as helpful as possible, because you really want them to be able to use the subscription they just purchased and not forget about it. So I think if you really think about all case possible of what a person will do after their purchase and try to accommodate for it, you can reduce that drop off. But I think ultimately that drop off will just exist, and you have to think about those edge cases.
Yeah, definitely. Also, like restating the email they actually used during sign up, which might have been like 10 screens before and they don't know anymore. So really, kind of make it bulletproof so that people come into the app, because otherwise, like if someone is running Web2App at scale, you are going to see it in the App Store reviews. That's when kind of average rating starts dropping, and there's a lot of people saying it's a scam. Like I never signed up for this, and I'm still paying. And so even though as a marketer it feels like my job is done, people paid. It shouldn't be.
And that's where I think the collaboration with product comes in. I think you have to be a lot more thoughtful about users and the journey than just someone that clicks an ad.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Thanks a lot. This was great. Thanks again for joining. Really enjoyed it. And for the audience, as I said, the video is going to go on YouTube. You will be sent a link, I think, as well. And once it's live on YouTube, feel free to leave feedback, suggestions. We are in collaboration with Funnel Fox. I'm going to do 2 more of these. It's my first time hosting, and I want to get better.
You are a great host. You have been a great host, Marcus.
Cool. Let's wrap this up. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the audience.
Bye. Bye.